Hey guys, today I'll be making a 2024 presidential election prediction between incumbent Democratic President Joe Biden and former Republican President Donald Trump. Now, the reason why I'm making this prediction between these two candidates is because right now they are the frontrunners for the 2024 presidential election for their respective political parties. So for the Democratic Party right now, Joe Biden is the frontrunner for this nomination, followed by his Vice President Kamala Harris, then followed by Pete Buttigieg and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Warren, Sanders, and Clinton really don't have too much of a chance at winning in 2024, all three of them because of age, but also the fact that it's very unlikely that voters are going to vote, especially for Hillary Clinton again. AOC may run in 2024, but I do think that's very unlikely. Now, the thing about this is that if the incumbent Joe Biden, if he does run for re-election, none of these Democrats are going to challenge him. Kamala Harris is not going to challenge the president that he's serving with for the 2024 Democratic nomination if Joe Biden does announce a run. That is just not going to happen. However, if you do look at the Republican presidential nomination here, Donald Trump at 41 cents per share, Ron DeSantis at 25, and Nikki Haley in third at 7. So if Donald Trump were to run in 2024, he would probably face a little bit more of a primary opposition than Joe Biden. However, I don't think it would be too strong of an opposition because Donald Trump right now is polling very, very well and still has an overwhelming majority of support from the Republican Party. However, there will be a 2024 GOP nomination process because of the fact that Donald Trump is no longer the incumbent president, so will be a little bit higher profile than the Democratic nomination in 2024 if Joe Biden were to run. And if we were to look at the head-to-head betting odds here between the Democrats and the Republicans, the Democrats currently have 53 cents per share in terms of their chances of winning the 2024 presidential election. For the GOP, it currently sits at 50 cents per share. So right now, the Democratic Party is still favored in terms of holding on to the White House, however, by a very slight margin, and this margin continues to decrease as time goes on. But I think that definitely the Democratic Party does have a very good chance in 2024, no matter who they run. But I think that Joe Biden, at the end of the day, is the best candidate. All the numbers point to that fact. Joe Biden is the best possible candidate right now that the Democratic Party can put up in 2024 because they really don't have anyone else. Pete Buttigieg and AOC, I do think, are going to be too polarizing to win in a general election. And Kamala Harris is just too disliked. Although Joe Biden is disliked, he is still a lot more popular than Donald Trump, and he is still a lot more popular than Kamala Harris as well. So I'm going to start off by filling in the solid states on this map, starting off with the states in the West Coast. I'm not going to classify Oregon as a solid state in this video. However, I do think that 100% Joe Biden is going to win the state, and I'm also not going to categorize New Jersey as a solid state in this video, but I do think that the state of Delaware, Joe Biden's home state, will be solid, along with the District of Columbia. The state of Illinois will be solid as well, and the state of Hawaii. So in the state of Illinois, the state is shifting to the right. Biden won by 17 points in 2020. It went to Hillary Clinton by 17.1 percentage points. 2012, Obama won by 16.9, and in 2008, Obama won by 25.1%. Illinois is the home state of Barack Obama, so he was able to win by a very strong margin in 2008. Before this, the state of Illinois was a Democratic state, although by likely margins. It was solid under the second term for Bill Clinton, but before that, of course, it did vote Republican when they controlled the presidency for 12 years straight. So these are the solid states for Joe Biden, putting him up at 158 electoral votes. For Donald Trump, I have the states of Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana. All these states in the middle of the country are going to be solid for the former president. I'm also going to categorize the 1st District of Nebraska as solid, this district right here. This is because of redistricting. I do think that Donald Trump will do a little bit better in the state of Nebraska overall because redistricting does benefit the GOP here, as well as the fact that he only won the 1st district by 14.9 percentage points, which is why it was likely in 2020, but I think he can definitely put that up to 15% in a redistricted 1st district in 2024. Kansas and Missouri, although barely, I do think they will remain solid states for the former president, as well as all the states here in the Deep South, all going to be solid for the GOP. Tennessee, Kentucky, and Wyoming are the final states on this map that I have solid for the Republican Party for Donald Trump. So this puts Trump up at 102 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 100 158 electoral votes, with the solid states filled in. Now, before I move on to the likely states, I do want to take a look at some of the head-to-head polling between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So right now, Donald Trump does lead in many of the recent polls that have been released, although you do have a good number of polls where Joe Biden does lead. Kamala Harris does fall behind in basically every single poll here, but Joe Biden is not polling as well against Donald Trump as he was, of course, during the 2020 presidential election, and his numbers have been slipping more and more as his presidency has gone on. However, the surprising thing is that in statewide polling, Joe Biden does do a lot better against Trump. If we look at a state like Wisconsin, this is the only poll that's been released this year in 2021. Joe Biden still leads over Donald Trump by 4 percentage points. If you were to take a look at another state, let's take a look at Michigan, where we don't have new polls out, but if you do go to a state like Florida, where we do have new polls out, Joe Biden does lead over Donald Trump by 2 percentage points, over Ron DeSantis by 10% in some of the latest polls, and he leads by 2% over DeSantis in this poll and by 8% over Donald Trump in a previous poll. So definitely, I think Joe Biden is polling all right in many of these states. On the national level, he is not polling as well. However, on the statewide level, he is doing a lot better. As you can see, this Wisconsin poll showing Biden up 4%. So this Iowa poll shows Trump up 14%. So this is definitely not good news for the incumbent president. As you can see, you have the Florida polls right there. You also have a poll in Missouri where Trump leads by 19%. That's definitely very good for the GOP, for them in the state of Missouri, but you do have a poll in Arizona where Joe Biden leads by 7%. So on the national level, things are not looking too good for Joe Biden. But in terms of many of these swing states, he is still polling very well above Donald Trump. And I think that it will be difficult for Trump to flip many of these swing states in 2024, because even though Joe Biden is not popular right now, he is still the incumbent president, and he is still going into this election with an advantage because he is the current president, and it is harder to defeat incumbents than it is to defeat a challenger as an incumbent. So now I'm going to move on to filling in the likely states for both of these candidates. Now, these are states that I think that the party that I give it to is 100% going to win these states. So starting off the state of Oregon, Joe Biden, there's no doubt that he's going to win this state. He's going to win the state of Oregon. I think it will be a little bit under 15 percentage points. In 2020, he won the state by 16.1%. If you look back at 2016, Clinton only won it by 11%. So I do think that in the state of Oregon, it will still go to Joe Biden nonetheless, but I think the margin will be a little bit lower. They feel the same way in the state of New Jersey, where I will categorize it as a likely state for Joe Biden here as well. I also have the two states of Colorado and New Mexico that I do think will go likely for the Democratic Party. These states flipped in 2008 for Barack Obama and have been pretty solidly blue ever since. However, the margin is yet to cross 15%, at least in the state of New Mexico, and has not crossed 15%, or at least in the state of Colorado, and the margin has not crossed 15% in New Mexico since 2008. So this puts Joe Biden up at 195 electoral votes. I also have the at-large vote in Maine, and I apologize, the 1st District of Maine is solid for Joe Biden here as well, with the at-large vote in Maine going to be likely for the incumbent president. Now I'm going to fill in the likely states for Donald Trump. Starting off with the state of Indiana, I think that without Mike Pence on the ticket, it's very unlikely at this point that Donald Trump is going to run with Mike Pence again, but without Pence on the ticket, I think that he will perform just a little bit weaker in the state of Indiana, putting him down at a likely margin there. In South Carolina, I have this categorized as a likely state as well. The 2nd District of Maine I have as likely, as well as the state of Alaska. So in South Carolina, it's going to be a GOP state. However, they do tend to win this state by just a little bit under 15%. Normally around 10 to 15% is the margin that we see there. And in the state of Alaska, we have this as a likely state as well. This is that Trump has performed pretty poorly in his 2 elections, especially against John McCain in 2008 and Mitt Romney in 2012. So although the margin continues to shrink for the GOP under Donald Trump, I do think that it will remain a likely margin in 2024 for the former president. And so those are the states that I think will, I think these are the non-competitive states that I filled in so far. I'm also going to classify the states of Iowa and Ohio both as likely. I think these states will be a little bit more competitive just because they are not used to being so Republican, because they've only turned red in recent years. 2020, it looked as if Joe Biden had a good chance at flipping both of these states, but Donald Trump essentially won these states by the same margins that he did against Hillary Clinton in 2016. So these two states were definitely very disappointing for the Democratic Party in 2020, and in 2024, I don't think too much will change. I think these two states will continue to move with the Rust Belt towards the right, and I don't think the Democratic Party will have too much of a chance at flipping the states of Iowa and Ohio next in 3 years. So this puts Donald Trump up at 149 electoral votes and Joe Biden at 198. I'm now going to take a look at the lean states on this map, starting off with some of the GOP lean states, starting off with the state of Texas. In the state of Texas, this is a state that Donald Trump has, again, like the state of Alaska, Trump has performed pretty poorly in Texas in his 2 elections. If you look back at 2012, Mitt Romney won the state of Texas by 15.8%. In 2016, Trump won it by 9%, and in 2020, Trump won it by just 5.6%. So I do expect this margin to stay around the same in 2024. I don't think it'll get too much worse, but definitely I do not think it will go over 7% for the former president in Texas, because this is a state that he has just not been performing well in. However, a state that he does perform well in is the state of Florida, which I will also categorize as lean for the Republican Party. Although we saw many polls where Biden led in the state, especially against Ron DeSantis, which I did find surprising. The state of Florida, at the end of the day, it is going to go Republican in 2024 with Donald Trump on the ticket. Joe Biden just did not win enough support from Southern Florida to put him over the top. If he had won the same amount of votes in Miami-Dade County as Hillary Clinton with the same margin, he would have won the state of Florida. However, he did not do that, and so, of course, he lost the state of Florida by over I believe 2 percentage points. He lost it by 3.4%, when Hillary Clinton only lost Florida by 1.2%. So as Florida continues to shift to the right as well, their entire government at this point is controlled by the GOP. So it's very unlikely that Joe Biden is going to be able to flip Florida in 2024, even though it has, those 30 electoral votes that would be very important in a win for him. I apologize, I forgot the state of Virginia as well. The state of Virginia is going to be likely on this map, of course. It's 13 electoral votes will go to Joe Biden, so I apologize for that. But the state of Virginia definitely going to be a likely state for the incumbent president. Now for Donald Trump, I'm also going to give him North Carolina as a lean state. I don't think the margin will remain under 2% in 2024. Trump won by 1.3% in 2020. I think the margin will go up. Democrats, they've done better here. If you look at the 2004 margin, you saw Bush won the state by 12.4%. 2008, Obama won by 0.3%. 2012, Romney won it by 2%, 2016, 3.7 for Trump, and in 2020, back down to 1.3 for Trump. So definitely the state of North Carolina is a lot bluer than it was in 2004 when Bush won it by 12.4%, and 2000 when he won it by 12.8%. So the state is no longer a Republican state, by that much, but the margin I do think is enough for the GOP, at least in 2024, to hold on to the state against Joe Biden. And then for Democratic lean states on this map, there are not quite as many, but actually there are quite as many. There are 3 as well, but I'm going to start off with a tilt categorization in the 2nd District of Nebraska, just in case I don't forget. This is because the 2nd District has been redistricted, which is going to benefit the GOP just a little bit. I don't think Joe Biden will perform too well here, but I do think that it will be enough for him to win and get over the top in the 2nd District, even after redistricting, which does expand the district to a little bit further than the than the closest suburbs to Omaha, which is where the Democrats get most of their votes from the 2nd District. That's why they win the 2nd District, because Omaha is the largest city in the state, and those urban areas do tend to vote definitely a lot more for the Democratic Party. And so that's why it does go blue typically. However, in 2016, of course, it did vote for Hillary Clinton, but I do think that, or it did vote for Donald Trump, I believe, in 2016, as you can see here, by 2.2%. But I think that Joe Biden can still hold on to it in 2024. Now, for the lean states for the incumbent, I'm going to start off with the state of New Hampshire. I think that this state is going to continue to vote blue. You saw that in 2020, Joe Biden won the state by over 7 percentage points. Clinton in 2016, in contrast, won the state by less than 1 percentage point. But 2024, I think they'll meet somewhere in the middle, at around 4 to 5 percentage points at this point. I think that it won't be too difficult for Biden to win, but definitely it will be a state where he will have to work a little bit harder than he did in 2020. I'm also going to give him the state of Minnesota. The state has the longest Democratic voting streak out of any state in the union. Its 10 electoral votes, I think, will continue to go for Joe Biden. This is a state, again, that has voted with the Democratic Party for the longest amount of time because it was the only state that Ronald Reagan did not win against Walter Mondale in the election of 1984. As you can see here, 1984, every other state voted for the GOP, which is why Minnesota is the state with the longest Democratic voting history. 1980, it also voted for the Democratic Party for Jimmy Carter, although Jimmy Carter only won 49 electoral votes here in 1980. 1976, vote for Carter as well. The last time that the state of Minnesota voted for the Republican Party was in 1972 with the election of Richard Nixon, where George McGovern only won the state of Massachusetts. So this state has a very long Democratic voting history, along with many of these other states in the Rust Belt, but as time progressed, the state of Minnesota has remained a little bit more towards the left than these other three states to the east. And the final lean state on this map I have for the Democratic Party is the state of Michigan. I think that Biden will be able to hold on to that 2% margin in the state in 2024, giving him 15 more electoral votes. And now we have 5 more states that will decide the outcome of the 2024 presidential election, with both candidates at around the same electoral vote count at around 240 electoral votes. So these 4 states are going to be crucial in determining the outcome of this election. I'm going to start off by giving Donald Trump the state of Wisconsin. I think that this was a state that Joe Biden barely won in 2020. He won the state by just 0.6%. In 2016, Trump won the state by a larger margin of 0.76%, and with Joe Biden not being too popular at this point, I think that the margin is enough. I think the margin in 2020 was weak enough for Trump to have a very good chance at flipping it in 2024. So as of right now, I will categorize the state of Wisconsin as a tilt Republican state, with its 10 electoral votes going for Donald Trump. For Joe Biden, I'm going to give him, starting off here with the state of Nevada. I do think Nevada will remain a blue state, although by the smallest margin we've seen in a while. Clinton and Biden both won the state by 2.4%. It was one of my larger margins by Barack Obama, but that was, 8-10 years ago. But for the state of Nevada right now, I think that it will remain a tilt state and remain, in the hands of the Democratic Party. For Donald Trump, I'm going to give him the state of Georgia. This is going to be a tilt categorization here. I think that he will be able to flip this state back because of I think that in the state of Georgia, it's going to be very difficult for Joe Biden to hold on to this state just because of the fact that the state of Georgia, in the deep south, has a very long Republican voting history. And in 2024, with Joe Biden not being too popular right now, as of right now, I don't think it will be possible for him to hold on to the state. With the voter suppression that, has passed in the state as well, it will make it even more difficult for Democrats to win in Georgia in 2024. For Joe Biden, I'm going to give him the state of Arizona, putting him up at 258 electoral votes. The state of Arizona is a state that has been continuously shifting more and more to the left. You saw Joe Biden win the state in 2020, flipping it for the first time since 1996. You also saw in the state of Arizona in 2018 elect Democrat Kyrsten Sinema to the Senate, and 2020 elect Mark Kelly to the Senate. So in the state of Arizona, the state is shifting more and more to the left, getting more and more progressive. So I do think that Joe Biden will be able to hold on to a state that he flipped in 2020. And now we have the final state on this map that will decide the outcome of this election. Whichever candidate wins the state of Pennsylvania is going to cross 270 electoral votes. So in the state of Pennsylvania, I have this categorized as a tilt state for Joe Biden, just like it was in 2020. In 2020, Joe Biden won his home state of Florida, or of his home state of Pennsylvania, by 1.2%. I say home state, this was his birth state, so his home state technically is Delaware, but he was born in the state of Pennsylvania. He lived there as well. So in the state of Pennsylvania, it's 19 electoral votes I have projected to continue to go to Joe Biden, putting him up at 277 electoral votes, defeating Donald Trump with 261 electoral votes. So this is my 2024 general election prediction for the presidency between Democrat Joe Biden and Republican Donald Trump. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you like it down below if you enjoyed it. Comment down below which candidate you think would win in a head-to-head matchup in 2024. Subscribe to my channel if you have not, and I'll see you guys in the next video.